Welcome to the 2-Month Review, the weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter and 3%, in which we take one giant book, break it down, talk about it, and have some fun. This season, the 14th season, we're doing Willam Gaddis' JR, which this is the brand new New York Review of Books edition. I'm Chad Post from Open Letter Books, and joined as always by Brian Wood, author of Joytime Killbox.
Hi, Chad. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. And special guest Elizabeth Meo, who's from Tin House. What's your official title?
What?
What's your official title?
Associate editor.
Associate editor at Tin House. How's that going?
It's going great. Acquiring books, fiction, nonfiction, poetry, do it all.
You guys got a book on the translation list yesterday, the pen thing.
Yeah, we did the pen awards. We had 3 books long listed actually, but the translation was That Hair by Jamelia Almeida de Pereira, translated by Eric Becker. Super exciting.
Very cool. Very cool. It's a list that was fully dedicated to identity reading. It's pretty cool. Subtle digs. So Brian, I know what our next book is going to be.
Oh yeah? What is that? The dictionary?
Bottom's Dream by Arno Schmidt weighs 13 pounds, is a mere 1,500 and some pages long, and is written in 3 columns that are to be read simultaneously.
Oh, fantastic. I can't wait.
Ready to do that?
Yeah, so instead of 2 months, is it going to be just
a cover?
Oh my God.
Ryan, do you have any influence in like what is chosen? Have you have you ever tried to like express
I told Chad I don't like big books, and he just tortures me like every book is big. Let's do Doug's Newbury Report. It's like, fuck it. All right.
That's why
we're actually doing this.
Episode. The last one I did with you both was Duck's Newbury Report, and I picked like right at the end, and I was like, not doing that again. Hello.
You can get through the first 110 pages of this, or whatever it was, 140, pretty easily.
Yeah, it was fine.
Compared to 700 pages of Duck's Newbury Report.
Yeah, or Ada and Arda. That's just a nice little breezy read.
Dude, this really ties into Ada or Arda in a weird way. Again, I don't know if you guys listened to last week, but I already have questions about parentage and if people are cousins or brothers and sisters. And now there's like, again, a hint of incest. Like, what? Yeah. How is it possible that we keep having these books like really lead into one another in such a weird way? But just to say, Stu, we're never doing this book. I don't think anyone's ever read this book, like in its full entirety in translation, except for the translator, who's like the premier German translator for so long, and then spent like more than 2 decades translating that book.
Yeah, that book looks like a gag, like in a movie, like for a book club, and someone brings it out. Like that is a gag.
It is. It really is.
Unwieldy.
There are only like maybe 1,000, 2,000 copies printed, and 100 of them are in this warehouse in Funks Grove, Illinois. Most of the boxes of which are infested with mice.
Oh.
So
special.
Good times. I have some clean copies though that are here. But anyway, so last week we had Edwin and Morrow on to talk about JR, and both of them were rereading it for like the second or possibly third time, as was I. But you guys are both new readers to JR, right?
Mm-hmm.
Never seen before. What is your opinion about Gaddis going into this? Elizabeth, do you have any hot takes?
Well, no, but I have the Kindle edition, which is Dalkey's edition on Kindle, and it has.
Don't say that. That's not supposed to be there. I just double checked.
I don't know who's it. I'm so confused. I just made that up. I'm whatever. I didn't even look. But it has an introduction by Rick Moody that sort of formed my reading going in. So his whole thing was like, it's more accessible than you think. Like, don't be daunted. Everyone says you can't read this, but you can, just for like 4 pages. So I felt really excited going in. And then he talked about how he had a dinner with the author and just sort of went on about that. But the author was mostly sort of older and a little out of it during the dinner. So it didn't really come to much. But yeah, I mean, he clearly loves the book. I think he said it was his favorite of all of his books. And he said he never reaches kind of like dialogue like this again. I think there was one other book where he sort of gets close, but he was like, this is the most like extreme it goes with him.
Yeah, it's the longest, it's the most sustained.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. And then he talked too about how, we can look at this as like there was a line where he said he worked in this industry in finance for a while, and he was like, imagine what he would have written if he just taken like a tenure track writing job. And he was talking about how work influences what we do. So I've been thinking about that.
I have essays. Someone sent us before the start of this, someone sent us a few academic essays related to Gaddis's writing for work and how it influenced JR.
Oh, yeah, I'm really interested to know about that.
Yeah, I have to find it again. I sent it to you, Brian, but I can't remember. I had it open, but I didn't read it. It is really interesting with the work, with the talking and the voice thing. Frolic of His Own is close to this, but it has more exposition and is all legalese and has these really funny fake writings from like a judge. And so it has like more variation. This is the one that's like most sustained. Carpenter's Gothic is also all dialogue, but it's like 150 pages or something. So, okay. it's like a nugget compared to the monstrousness of JR.
I think he said this took him like 15 years to write. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah.
Because Recognitions comes out in the 60s, early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, and this comes out in 76.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can see why reading it, it's huge and it's so like interwoven and detailed and intricate. But yeah, that was kind of my framing, was the intro. That was all that I had.
Interesting. So just to clarify that on that ebook thing, if anyone is trying to buy the ebook, this is for the sake of Sarah Kramer especially, but the Delkey version should be not available. And I've marked it as inactive, as canceled, as non-existent, and yet it keeps showing up on Amazon and is screwing things up. If you search specifically for the New York Review Books edition, you can get to their ebook. And if anyone's trying to do that, please do that. You should not be getting the Delkey one. And after this recording, I'm going to delete the Delkey files from like every server that I can, and hopefully that'll stop it. But Amazon seems to just like want to sell this edition over and over again. So that's to clarify that. The edition, the New York Review Books edition, has an intro by Joy Williams, which I haven't read yet.
Cool.
I always read the intros at the end, so I haven't read that. But that would be the intro for people with this one. I'm curious as to like what she does in terms of like pumping you up or not. Did you read it, Brian? Did you read the intro?
I did not.
Okay.
I was excited to see an essay by her, so I really want to read it, but I'm trying to hold off because I don't want it to taint the science experiment. But I don't know anything about Gaddis other than he's supposed to be like Mr. Difficult from that essay in 2003 or something like that.
In which Branson talks about reading Recognitions and never being able to read JR.
Yeah. So that was like really my only like, oh, so he's a difficult postmodern author. That's kind of all I knew about him. But so far as I'm reading it, I could see how he's probably a huge influence on a lot of the 90s and 2000s, like white male postmodern authors. I could really see a ton of like Mark Lehner, for instance, like just noisy, chaotic, like insanely smart, or even some like David Foster Wallace stuff popping up. I could really see this maybe being something that may have influenced them, but that's kind of what I've got so far from it.
This is the opening to the introduction of Joy Williams. It's a quote from Gaddis. It says Gaddis on writing a novel, but this might be tied into what you were saying, Elizabeth. 16 years like living with a goddamned invalid. 16 years, every time you come in sitting there waiting just like you left him, wave his stick at you, plump up his pillow, cut a paragraph, add a sentence, hold his goddamn little warm milk, his goddamn hand, little warm milk, add a comma, slip up for some air, pack of cigarettes, come in right where you left him, ice follow you around the room, wave his goddamn stick figure out at the hell he wants, plump the goddamn pillow, change bandage, read aloud, move a clause around, wipe his chin, new paragraph, goddamn ice follow you out, stay a week, stay a month, whole goddamn year, think about something else, goddamn friends asking how he's coming along, I'll expect them out any day now, don't want bad news, no news, rather, here lies, big smile, out any day now, walk down the street, goddamn sunshine, begin to think, maybe you'll meet him, maybe cleared things up, got out by himself, come back, open the goddamn door right there where you left him. William Gaddis on writing a novel.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much in the book about that too, like, what it is to make art. And there's the person where it's like, if he has all these particular conditions, I forget which composer they're talking about, but it's like, if he sees the garden path, like he can no longer work because it shows him like the outside world. I mean, I love any book. I think every book is like about like every book is about what it is to write a book, but I feel like this one, that's especially fun to like.
That's interesting.
Part.
Because recognitions is 100% not so much about writing a book, but about art and creating art and the impossibility of creating something original. And that might really interest you as as a book, because it's all about counterfeiting and homage and various things like that. So it's very different. Recognitions is longer than this and not in voices. It's like a sort of normally structured book, like with exposition and dialogue and whatnot. This is the one that goes to that next level of just dialogue. So what was your first impressions for both of you?
Brian, you go first.
Sure. One, similar to Duck's Newburyport, the sound is incredible. Like his ear is out of control. Like, this is insanely good. So I'm just in awe of his ability to use dialogue. How rarely he has to use dialogue tags. He can still differentiate multiple characters on one page. That's so hard to do. And this is like a masterclass of that. And the other thing is, when he does do a little bit of exposition, holy shit, he is good at that too. And it's almost like, it's kind of like, remember like in Princess Bride when they sword fight and they're sword fighting with their left hand just to see like, yeah, I'm pretty good with my right, so I'll just fight you with my left hand. I feel like he's such a good writer. Like, this is just him like, I'll just do dialogue. Like, I'm really good at this other stuff. Let me just do dialogue.
It's so interesting. You're going to find this, Brian, as we go through it, especially that you, in about another like 100 pages, you'll have no question as to who's talking.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, you have to get through a few sections first in which there's like groups of people. It's like all the school last week, where like all the school characters are all in one room talking over each other and about all kinds of things, and to parse through that. And then this week it's the bank and the senator and Amy's dad, and they're all talking at once, and you have to figure that the senator is the one who's like the more dickish one. But like figuring out those voices is there, and then it becomes like within pages, like no question. JR always sounds like JR. Bass always sounds like Bass. They have their little ticks sometimes, but they're all there. Before we get into this actual section, I want to do one other thing. So I spent the last week in Funks Grove going through Delkey's, all their books, all the files. I'm putting together a complete set of all their titles, which I'm pretty close to right now, with things I took from the office and books I had at home. But one thing I'd been looking for was one of the first issues in which John wrote Dear Editor letters, because he would write these letters that were like, Dear Editor, and write like these people are writing to the Review of Contemporary Fiction, the literary journal that is part of Delkey. And then they would just write crazy shit. And then the editor would try and respond. And there's a number of these, and they're all influenced by Gaddis for a lot of it. Like John's writing, he wrote a novel as well that I've read, and a lot of it is based in voices of sad people generally, and endless repetition. Like variation and repetition is the Delkey aesthetic, mixed in through a nouveau roman French style plus like a kind of Eastern European version. And John's greatly influenced by that. So I finally today in the basement found the issue with the Dear Editor letter that I wanted. And there's a long one that I'm not going to read to you, but it will appear on 3% tomorrow. So anyone who's interested, go check this out. 3% is getting wicked artistic soon. But this one I thought would give you a sense of this. And I read this out loud, and Kaya said it reminded her of you, Brian, it sounds like what you would write. So, Dear Editor, I once tried reading a novel called The Sky is Changing by Gilbert Sorrento, and the damn thing nearly made me puke. It reminded me of my own unhappy marriage, and the last thing I needed was to have my face rubbed in it by the supposed novel. Where the hell does the guy come up with ideas for such things? And why does he think anyone would want to get depressed by reading it? This has to be the most depressing thing anyone has ever heard of. After about 50 pages of the book, I stopped reading and turned on the television. As a matter of fact, I haven't tried reading a novel since then. My marriage still stinks, but at least I don't have to read about it in a book like this anymore. And besides, television can give you a few laughs, unlike this novel. The editor replies, I believe the novel you're referring to is The Sky Changes by Gilbert Sorrentino. Yes, you are right. It is a very depressing novel and should be required reading for all of those who are about to enter into the state of marriage. But once you are married, there's no point in reading the book because, as you indicate, it will only depress you. There's issue after issue after issue of these. There's the one that comes out tomorrow will be super fun. But I was reminded of that when I was looking through. I mean, the second issue of the review is on Gaddis. Like all the Gaddis stuff is there. We have the letters of Willam Gaddis that we technically cannot sell at this point in time, but may be able to in the future, and that I'll be able to quote from in next episodes. But they're all of his collected letters in a giant hardcover. So I've been surrounded by all this stuff for like a week. And especially in the sense that Delkey's offices, when John died, John was living alone in the middle of the country at 75 with like a housekeeper coming to clean things up. It is this chaos. It was 100% the chaos of this book and the chaos of like things being everywhere and how much detritus there is. And like that was what this office was for the past week. So
was that spell out like entropy at one point in the school lesson. They're like ENT. Yeah. Imagine that, like written.
What's been your first impression reading JR?
I mean, similar to you, Brian, I was really struck by like the shift when he will do exposition, just those long kind of meandering passages. And you're like, oh my God, you can do this too. Are you kidding me? But I think beyond that too, the excitement when I get a reference, like I was like, the ring cycle, I see the joke, haha. But then, you know, I know 1%. Then I'm like on Wikipedia with the ring cycle, like trying to follow and just knowing how much you're missing, like referentially. And here or there, I'll be like, I kind of know that's a joke alluding to this maybe, but just the sense that if you read it slowly and you took the time to do every reference, like I feel like there's more it could offer on every read, and it's just such a like rich text.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's the like when it changes scenes, is that what probably throws people off the most? I mean, for me, that's probably the most difficult thing is getting the scene transitions, because they happen very abruptly and without any kind of like sign to it. There's no markers.
There's no marker of time passage either. Yeah. So like the scenes, like today's scene, the first scene is in his studio, right, with his sister or cousin Stella, and where he's kind of declaring his love for her. And then the next scene is on the train to New York City, but that should presumably be the next morning. But we don't actually, it's never indicated as to like the time that had passed really. So yeah, I think that throws people off, but I think people really don't like unattributed dialogue. Like they don't know what to do with it. It's just like looks intimidating. And like if you start reading it for, I mean, to read, like people are just basically read for like to confirm their identity. Like we're reading TikTok and Twitter constantly to like reaffirm ourselves and to like have a sense of ourselves. So when you ask them to read a novel, they're asking them to do a lot of work. And if that novel starts out like this one, where there's no bearings, there's no place, and there's no names almost, and it's just people speaking about money, but you don't know why, and something about a lawsuit, like that's gotta just put people into like a tailspin of like, oh, this is a lot. Like I don't know how to do this, and I don't recognize this. This is not my world. My world is different.
I don't know. I mean, we had to read like Tristram Shandy in grad school, and I was kind of like, well, I got through that. I can get through anything.
I want to issue a new version of Tristram Shandy. So whoever should write the intro for that's a big name author, put that in the comments or email me, because I love that book.
That would be super fun to have a new edition.
It's like a super cool edition that's like pretty and not like the $5 Wordsworth edition. Yeah, it would be wonderful.
I think, I mean, I feel like pretty quickly this book is a book that like it tells you how to read it, in the sense that like it's clear you don't need every little inference to get through, right? And I think I saw Gaddis said in an interview, like just get most of it, like read for the sound and the flow, and like if you accept that, then you can go through. But if you're like, I want to understand every exchange, then like, no, you know?
Yeah, we said this last week for anyone who missed that episode or whatever, was that for first-time readers, just read it as fast as you can. Yeah. Don't worry. Just read it fast and let it like wash over you, get the voices. You can use the JR annotations that Steve Moore put together are super helpful, in part for the annotations, like what you're saying of like picking up the references. Some of that's in there. I'm sure it's not complete, but it's like pretty heavy. But more importantly, it gives you scenes. So it tells you the scene. So like the first scene today, scene 12, is Bass' studio. Bass plays on the piano. PC is written for Stella, confesses his love. Stella's cab arrives. And that little bit is usually enough to frame what's going on within the scenes, and then you can just enjoy them. So if you're reading it for the first time and you use that as kind of a guide marker to like set you up, or if you're confused and you're like, I don't get this, like, I mean, it would be easy to get confused over like Amy's dad being at the thing in a bit that we'll get to, the school teacher with her dad being in that office and what's going on there.
That was confusing. Yeah.
That could be very confusing. These sort of bits usually straighten that out just enough so that you know what's going on. And that's kind of what I hope we can do on this season, is sort of explain the bits, the parts, the scenes as we go and what is enjoyable about them. Because some of it, even last week, Edwin was talking about whether or not we think that the one woman died. He's like, she dies in a car accident, like right there. But I don't think she does. I think he was wrong. But like, there's things that like, and I was saying that I think that the beginning part where the coach is creating, teaching his class, he's teaching anatomy out of like car parts built into a human. And I'm not sure that that's right, but like we don't, even people who have read it multiple times don't have all of those answers, and you don't really need them per se. But if you have like some sort of frame, it works really easily to get into, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think on first read, I knew that website was there and I had clicked around a little before I read this, but I wanted my first read to be like no outside help, just to see like how much I could get on my own. But I feel like there might be part, but if the voices clarify and kind of lock in, as you're saying, then I think it would stay without that. But it would help to have if I just like logistically, you know.
It didn't. I didn't know this existed. I don't think when I read it the first time. Even if it did exist, I'm not even sure. Like this might be newer than the website might be newer than the first time I read it. But yeah, I did what you're talking about and found as time went on that it really did lock, and that there are more scenes with individual. When there's more scenes with two characters instead of a group, that's when things really like make more sense, right?
I think even at the end of this section, that was the first time it was two people and somebody was speaking, and I was like, I know who it is. Like I'm getting.
Yeah.
Person. Maybe it's just JR. We sort of
Gibbs and Bast, or JR and Bast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's both of those ones come up. Gibbs is one of my favorites because he's just drunk. I love him. He's so good. The physics teacher. So anyways, with this first section, so they go into his office or into his studio. Stella, who is his sister / cousin, and she's asking about like the composition he's working on, and he sort of declares his love for her, and that's pretty much it. She leaves. He's like, no, wait. He gives her the beer can and she leaves.
She's also like not asking about his composition, and then he's kind of offended that she's not asking. He's like, wait, why wouldn't, like, I do want to talk, which I think was very funny. Their whole interaction was I enjoyed. I think the space where they interact is interesting too. Like just the idea of this studio where his sort of music can be developed in like a sacred way. Like he's like, the outside world like won't come in and disrupt the thing I'm working on, and it's safe here. I don't know. I thought that was fascinating. Like just again, the idea of like what it is to make something and to create something, and the conditions for that, you know?
Okay, so this isn't giving away too much, but at that last scene that you referenced that we read for today with Gibbs gives him a key to an apartment on 96th Street. Okay, wait for that. Wait for that.
Okay, I wonder.
That will play out with exactly what you're saying, and is going to build that sort of idea.
Okay, cool.
I think, if I remember right. I remember the apartment, and I think that it's not really a studio, but it refers to this as well. It ties into that exact idea. So, yeah, and this is the part where and this is the part too where like Gibbs is also in love with Stella. Was the other thing I wrote down. So we've got multiple people hankering for Stella.
I was confused about Stella's age because there's not a huge difference separating her and Edward, but then she also seemed with the two. Like Julia and the other one, she seemed pretty comfortable with them. So I was just like, you could be any age, but it didn't really matter.
I'm not sure that we know that Bast isn't a minor from that last section when the lawyer is talking to him, but he doesn't really have an age. It's probably on here somewhere, but I always envision him being quite young, like 23 to 25. And that's part of the reason why like JR and the kids sort of relate to him. Is that he's like a young, he's not even a teacher. He's just there as like on residence, and then doesn't teach anymore because he reads that crazy ass thing, which is filthy and broadcasted. So he's done with teaching. But I always think of him as being relatively young. And then Stella could be a little bit older, but she's married and divorced. Mm-hmm. Or was she widowed? She's divorced, right?
I think divorced. Yeah, I think that's right.
I can't ever remember.
When he remarried Nellie, is that right or no?
No. Nellie was married to her dad.
Oh, tells the daughter. Okay, got it. Yeah.
So they aren't actually sister. They aren't sister and brother no matter what, because Nellie is Bass' mom, and but possibly they have the same dad.
Yeah. Yep.
God damn it! Fucking Nabokov all over again. It's such a hard time keeping this straight, and I know we're screwing it up, and people can correct me in the comments. That's totally fine. So then, I don't know if there's anything else from that scene that you guys wanted to talk about. Brian?
No, not really. I've been less interested in the actual like scenes themselves, and to me, it's just about all the chaos and everything is just bonkers, and that's why I really have been enjoying reading it fast and reading it on prescription pain medication. It's been a wonderful experience.
Solid. Good way to do it. Good way to do it.
No. But again, with the music and kind of like this kind of angst that he does have about it, I like how they keep kind of making fun of how he's in his father's shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And like these little notes in your head, are you making them up? Do you like? It's like everything he does is a joke, right? He wants to be taken seriously. He's like everything he does, like nobody takes it very seriously or has really that much in the way of respect for him or like, anything he's doing. Even at the beginning, like he just leaves, like the lawyer's there and his like crazy siblings or parents are there or whatever, his mom are there. He just like leaves and nobody like says anything or does anything, just bye. All just funny. Like everything is really this is satire at like the highest quality.
Yeah.
Which I think makes it such a great read right now because we need satire so bad. But like, there's few satirists that are kind of publishing great stuff right now.
Absolutely.
It stands up so nice and aged really well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like all this stuff, like the education, it's weird how like the education thing seems still pertinent. The capitalism thing will always be pertinent, but like it's really interesting. It doesn't seem to age in the least, aside from like the numbers, how much money things are, and like a few things like that. It's not really, it's kind of timeless. Like those business people are always like that. It's not like business dudes are different now. We're talking shit in the bathroom or whatever. Yeah, I only refer to the scenes just as because they're on here as ways to like remember things.
Yeah. No. That's totally fine but yeah, I'm just thinking of what like stuck out me with that scene was just that theme of him not really being good enough or feeling inadequate and being in his father's shadow and not being able to be himself.
And he is trying to create a great composition.
Yeah.
Like a Wagnerian composition or something, massive. So the next scene is actually like a weird one where Stella runs into Gibbs. That's where he's like, hey, I said some mean things to you before, but like, I really like you. Like, you're great. Like you tell you the truth. I'm a little embarrassed seeing you, blah, blah, blah. Then the next long scene on here is their trip to Manhattan, where Amy Joubert takes the peoples on the field trip to New York. Bass, also going into town, reluctantly assists. JR and the Hyde Boy compared portfolios on the train ride. Children visit Wall Street, where they are met by Dave Davidoff and taken to Crowley and Brothers, where they purchase one share of Diamond Cable. That is what happens in this, but that is definitely not what happens in this.
Yeah, everything's just so bizarre. They're going on a field trip to the stock exchange, and you've got them looking at the papers. That one's crap. That one's crap. Like it's so weird and crazy and bizarre.
I was reading this last night, and I was like, I wonder if Brian, if you ever wrote in and emailed in wrote in for any of those things from like old magazines, where it's like you get this booklet on how to do X. Just send us like this 25 cents in a self-assessment.
I don't know what this is. I was so confused. I've never seen anything like.
It reminds me a lot of the back of comic books.
Yes, that's what it. Yeah, exactly. That's what it is, more or less. I think
it's just the cheapest, dumbest like advertising space you could have was the back of comic books, and it'd be to buy Sea Monkeys or Ninja Stars. And you could write it in, you could cut something out and mail it in with like $5, and they would send you just the cheap, like something you get at a flea market, basically.
Okay.
I remember we had a kid in, this would have been the 4th grade, that bought this ninja kit, and it was these like claws you could put on your hands to help you climb trees. Like they were actual spikes and like these little pegs for your feet to like climb things. And it was ninja stars and nunchucks. And he brought all of them to school to like show off, and he like put them on to go climb a tree. And the yard duty, he got suspended for a week for bringing weapons to school.
Oh.
He got it in the back of like a X-Men comic book or something from the 90s.
There's all this stuff like that. Like X-ray vision glasses is the one that I
Okay.
you get X-ray vision glasses. You get the dried seahorses. You could get like, but there'd also be these booklets like the Charles Atlas idea of like, you know, learn how to become ripped in like 30 days. You need to get this booklet and we'll improve you. And so there's ways that you'd get all this stuff that was like essentially free, but it was like junk. And it wasn't like real. It wasn't like what it's supposed to be. And they're trafficking in that in here essentially. Like all the booklets that they've gotten or access to it. So they're like, oh, we're getting army surplus. We're going to get a tank. And they're like, it's a fucking goddamn gas tank. It's not even a tank. They just like, it's a tank, but it's not. Like it's all that kind of like little low rent sort of like paper
random
paper empire.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole section is super funny. That's why I stole the title for this one, How to Make Big Profits Overseas. Like I love it. It's like, you want your own import-export business? It's, you know what it is, Elizabeth? It's the equivalent of, have you heard the commercials or seen them ever, like the billboards where it's like, here's how you flip houses. You don't need any money. Just come to this program and I'll show you how you can invest your money and turn it into a millionaire. It's that.
This week we'll be in Rochester at the center.
I mean, like you're talking about it being dated or whatever. That was the one thing to me. I was just like, this is so foreign. Like we never did this when I grew up, and I just didn't have like I could grasp what it was, you know, but it just was like not. I'm trying to think of like is there an equivalent of like an online?
All the self-help things are part of this. Like the self-help empire is very similar to this, like the Tony Robbins side of it, where like you're buying access to an idea. Sort of like it, but yeah, there's also, I mean, I think that there are like Instagram ads are remarkably close to this in the sense that they tend to be ads for products that don't exist yet, and they want you to invest in. So you're buying something so they can produce it to then sell this item. And that's not that dissimilar from this, because like, don't you want to have like a flying car? You can give us $59.99, and when we finally produce a prototype, we'll give you a flying car. Like, it's kind of like that. I don't know.
Like the shoes, like if you wear these shoes, then you can show them off, and there's stuff like that out there now. Like being an influencer is kind of like that in a way.
Exactly.
One thing I thought was interesting from this section is I think the first time we see JR, he's wearing like a diamond pattern sweatshirt, and then they bought diamond stock. Like that's like a little parallel that they put in for you. I liked that.
JR is awesome. Yeah, I like that too. He's savvy. So I thought you'd like Brian, the part 2 where he's like, yeah, they've got this club with bunnies that I can join. Like,
oh my god.
That also was like an odder part.
Yeah.
I was just like, is this? And then it is. Okay.
But this is part on page of the JR of the New York Review Books on 85. Top of 85 is where I think that Edwin and I were wrong last week. So Miss Flash goes out to see the textbook salesman, and there's a car crash, and Edwin's like, I think she dies there, but I think she doesn't, because top 85 seeing her in the hospital, and she says Leroy motioned them right out in front of the truck. So I said, you get a better story to tell your insurance company. So she's alive, I think, in the hospital from this car crash. So it was a car crash. All that was true. I don't think she's dead though. Just to clarify, one of the many mistakes we will make this year.
Yeah, I like the right before that on 83, below the Playboy bunnies. Can we make reservations for yourself and your spouse? What's a spouse? What's the difference? It's free.
All the little questions are so good that they'll ask within it. It's great.
Yeah. Like I like to we're even and right above that with the questions. How much does that say? 25 cents? You a member? Dollars? No. Oh my God. So they have the money to go get the share. And then they go to the wall.
That Davidoff character was just pitch perfect too.
That dude is spectacular. Like we all know that guy.
Yeah, it's so good.
And what does he keep saying? Like they're really not they're smart. What is it? What does he say instead of they're smart? He's like, they're really sharp.
Yeah, they're all youngsters. That's what he calls them.
What did he
Everyone.
say?
No, I don't know what the adjective is though. I
Is
just
it
think.
shrewd?
Oh, maybe.
That they're really shrewd, and he's like, gotta watch out for those kids. They're really shrewd kids.
Or pull one over.
He says it over and over and over again. And you've got JR being like, hey, I got a question about this preferred shares thing. And they're like, yeah, that's a lot of math. Like, we're good. You got to watch out for those kids. They're really shrewd. They're going to trick you one day. And like, very much.
They want to know about his hunting or whatever and his gun.
What's that?
They just want to know about like his hunting pictures and his gun. And they're like, how did you kill that thing? Is that a horse? Where'd you shoot it?
Yeah, it's so funny. I like one of the lines I just underlined out of middle of nowhere is when they're at the stock market, at the stock exchange, and it says, see that little guy waving down there? Hey, I bet if I spit. Like, this is such a kid, a 12-year-old group of kids on a trip to New York at this point in time where there's like, you know, not the same level of like of paranoia and attention being paid. Like the number of times that they're like 6, 7, 8, yeah, 12? I don't know. There's how many people? They have like 13 tickets at the end, but they don't have that many kids. Like everyone's like
12 come back, 13 go down. Like, oh. I think
field trips like
the movies, that's later, but it's just hilarious when they're like trying to look around and they're like, can we see this? And they're like, they're not going to let them in. Like, you can just go to the Western. Like, that's fine.
That was like old school New York where it's just like porno theaters all over the place. And like, there's like, oh, wow, that looks great. Choose that one. There's something, did you guys go to like, did you ever go to the stock exchange or what was your weirdest like trip? Like, in elementary or junior high?
I mean, we would go to Boston. It reminded me a lot of going in, you know, a lot from Southern New Hampshire. Like it's a similar thing, but we just did museums, which I thought was funny. They kept asking, oh, where's the museum? Like, when are we going to the museum?
Money. They're like, yeah, isn't that every bank?
Yeah. He's like, oh, just take them to a bank. It's fine. Like, whatever.
I remember we went to San Francisco and we went to Chinatown in San Francisco. We did a field trip to a fortune cookie factory and had to make fortune cookies in the factory.
Wow.
And we like burned our fingers. The machinery's all hot. I don't know what they were thinking, like kids like into a working factory. But and then in Chinatown, all anybody did was just buy fireworks and the switchblades that have a comb. Like everybody's
You're badass.
Yeah, that was our field trip. Let's just go make fortune cookies.
It's so funny. So Long Island goes to New York, New Hampshire goes to Boston, Southern California goes to San Francisco. Growing up in Michigan, we went to Detroit. Yeah.
Oh.
This is where they film parts of Trading Places.
What did you see in Detroit? Did you just do like museums or?
There was specifically remember going to see the Nutcracker actually at like the big theater, which was very stately and like was like a really prominent theater and is now I think gutted and like run down with a hole through the wall. And like one of those pictures that you see on like the Detroit ruin porn, I'll be like, oh, that's the place that we went to.
I have a couple more interesting ones too, now that I'm remembering. We went one time to like a salmon fishery in Manchester and we watched like the salmon swim and we talked about that. And then in high school, they had an optional trip where you could go to Europe and they took us to the red light district.
Fucking yeah.
With like your French teacher or whatever. I was very, like we just walked through and then everyone wanted to leave, but it was weird. I don't know like who put that on the agenda, but okay.
I love it. I approve this message.
Let's go.
It's great too. So Bast is there. Just to clarify this, so Bast is on the train randomly going into New York. Amy Joubert is on there with the kids. And then she like basically immediately is like, dude, you have to help me. Like this is fucking nonsense. I can't handle this. This is crazy. And I totally get that. He's going into town to try and get a job because he's not going to be teaching anymore because he read the wrong notes, the thing about Mozart. It was Mozart, right? Or Bach, Mozart.
Mozart, yeah.
It was Yeah.
Yeah. Was that what you were gonna say?
No, I don't know. I don't remember.
And then they get to the stock exchange, and they get to the stockbroker's office where they're going to buy their one share of Diamond Cable, and you start to get bits of like what JR is up to a little bit, because he's like picking up pamphlets, like he's just a collector. And this is one of the things that runs throughout too. Like we're talking about the entropy, and that his space, the studio space, sounds chaotic and like filled with shit. The apartment on 96th Street is 100% that. But like even JR is part of the same thing. He's just getting all these pamphlets, just get all this shit, just gather shit. And like some of it, something will be worthwhile in here. There's some way that you can work this. So he's like picking up pamphlets like, where to go? The profit and loss. Oh yeah, profit and loss sheets, like institutional profit and loss things. Can I have this pamphlet? And they're like, yeah, man, take whatever. Yeah. Can I get this thing like on capital gains and losses and this? Take it, just take it. Like they don't care what he's picking up. And then he's the one who's also asking like, what exactly is a warrant? A stock warrant? I think that I'd better wait until you boys and girls know a little bit more about the price of apples. You with me? Like that's such a perfect like dismissiveness towards like a kid that age. But he's also cottoning on to something. Like JR is actually really like idiot savant in terms of this kind of thing, and that there's something maybe not fishy, but something to be taken advantage of. Yep. Mr. Eigen that shows up here, that's supposed to be Gas.
Oh,
really?
Sorry, Gas. I was thinking of Willam Gaddis. That's supposed to be Gaddis himself, but he said the character became something else, but originally it was going to be his persona within this book.
That's interesting.
Yep.
Huh.
Okay. And they give them all the annual report. There's like and then okay, so this is where it gets sort of confusing.
Authors always trying to write themselves in their own work. Good God, their egos, you know? Who does that? What kind of author's gonna do that? I'm gonna I'll just use my initial, it'll be me, and I'll be in it too.
Yep. Not even his initial. But he was working at those places, so it made sense. So like that's how he got the language. Okay, so here's the complicated thing. So they then go to the company. What's the name of the company? It's not Typhon, is it? It's
they say Typhon. Well, it's multiple, right? Like, don't they have lots of different? But then they're under like an umbrella. Like, I don't know the big name though.
I think it's Typhon International.
You never heard of Typhon.
Film, and then we talked with her uncle Governor John Cates, and her father Monty Moncrief. So what seems to be happening, correct me if I'm just recapping this without looking, but what seems to be happening is that Monty, her dad, is going to be appointed to a position that the senator or this governor, the governor wants to get him appointed to a position. So he's going to go up in front of whatever it is to be approved or not. And as part of that, they have to distance him from this company. And so all of his shares of his stock are being put into these trusts, one for her son and one for her, of all these shares that are preferred stock shares. And then the preferred stock shareholders don't have any influence unless you don't pay dividends 4 times in a row. And they haven't paid dividends 3 times in a row. But if they don't pay dividends the 4th time, that shareholder of the preferred stock will have votes. And she is getting essentially like 200,000 or whatever it was shares to be in control of. And they're asking her to sign these papers. And they're sort of explaining this in tangential ways because they're like, don't let Monty know about it. The more that Monty knows, if they ask him questions on the stand, he could say something. Like, just ignore all the fucked up shit that we're doing. Like, it's legal-ish. Like, it's okay. It's sort of legal. It's by the letter of the law, not the spirit of the law sort of situation. And just let her have these shares. At the same time, we're getting the bits where JR is asking about the film, being like, so we get 1 vote. Like, we have 1 share, so we get 1 vote. Like, what if you had 200,000 votes or whatever? And they're like, well, you could vote for yourself 200,000 times. You'd have control. So like this idea of power and where the power is and what's being like papered over and what's being like moved within these men that are moving things to these other places is like really crucial right there. But this is all gonna come to bear in the future. I
think the other thing too is that some of it has been like preemptively included in the packets given to the children, so they like the information. And JR's like, wait, like he's going to do this in the government, and they're like, oh, not yet. Like, just don't say anything. Ha 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 ha. I thought that was so funny. But he's picking
They,
up on all.
they give them the bylaws. They give them the bylaws of the company. As a shareholder, you get the bylaws, and they're like, "Why did you do that?" And they're like, "Well, why not?" And like, well, nobody ever reads them, but like JR is reading them, and is like, "What about this thing?" And they're like, no, we can't explain that right now. Like, that's too complicated for you.
I think he picked up on family stuff too. He's just sharp.
Yeah, and a 98 has. I could even vote 293,000 times for myself for a director if I wanted to, couldn't I? I mean, like, that's democracy. It sounds like a lot. So that's the numbers that they've seen the stock certificate, and she's being given it in that way, and that's kind of what's happening in that background. So I think that somebody, again, people who are more experienced with this, please feel free to comment and correct that if that's not quite right. But that is at least a sketch of what's happening in that scene, and they're two kind of parallel scenes.
Yeah, they're trying to give them lunch the whole time.
And they never get their goddamn lunch.
So then we go to they have to go eat. So then we like go into the next.
But there's one other important thing that I don't remember enough of to really pick this apart. But like, they go there with their $24 to buy this one share of stock. And then they're like, well, what is it now? And they look and they're like, oh, it's down. It's $22. And they're like, oh, we saved $1.50. And they're talking about the brokerage fees and like all the taxes and the 4 cents and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, that little bit is always, that's like the office space of this whole thing, of like those little bits of what happens to those bits, the 4 cents, the little extra thing that you can get, is that's the grift that will make everything run in our weird society in some way. Sort of like all of his stuff on lawyers, like in Frolic of His Own, the lawyer stuff is basically like how lawyers get paid to exist to have law. Like, you never settle shit. You just exist on this, like, siphoning off a bit of the money that's moving between different things. Like, you siphon just a slight bit of it. But they do reference several times that the papers are calling and saying, and they're putting out that press release and like, why are you don't work for the papers, you work for this company. Like, don't answer them. But what they keep saying is like, it's not a problem. It's just a correction. It's just a correction. It's just a correction to the market, which makes you think. And then they're like, and the stock's going down, 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 down. And what JR asked about is the stock option price, which is one of these things that's legal, but like, and encouraged by business school. Having been in business school, like, they encourage you to do this to get a head CEO, but it's the fucking most like devious part of stock market capitalism, is that you can hire someone and say, you have the right to buy X $100,000 of shares of stock at this price, which is like the lowest price from the past X number of days. So even if the stock goes up to like $500, but you have it in your thing to buy it at 15, you get it at 15. So like, there's ways to like get these stock options that you can act on, which greatly benefit the person in charge or the director. And JR points that out in here of like, what is this? And it's like one of these parts of capitalist business that's so gross and just accepted, and also should be kind of illegal. And if you're Kodak, you fuck it all up and make it very public and lose all of your funding from the government because you're stupid. Instead of insulting Ohio this year, we'll insult Kodak and all local Rochester companies. Stop. Okay. Then there's, what's the next?
You mentioned Office Space, but I think the original reference for that is Superman 3.
Oh, right on.
3 with Richard Pryor, where he plays like a computer genius janitor who discovers you could take a penny of a penny of a penny, and he writes a computer program and he becomes the wealthiest man in the world, right? Stealing everybody's tiny fractions of cents that nobody cares about. He just collects all the crumbs. And then he builds robots. That's a really bad movie. That movie's so bad.
I think 4 is worse, but 3 is really bad.
Oh yeah, 3 is especially bad. It's so good.
I always love like when you think about it, like whenever like Lois Lane is falling or like Superman catches her and then flies off with her, Lois Lane would be dead like immediately. Like if you were falling and someone just like flew up and grabbed you and sped off into like the atmosphere, you die. There's no saving that person.
Well, I think we have to suspend our disbelief just a little bit.
It's fine.
Absolutely not. Suspend nothing. So there's also something going on where they are with the cable company that they are trying to work out a deal in which they'll be able to have a plant that's paid for involving cobalt, which I was going to look up all this stuff and figure this out, but I forgot to, in a country in Africa. But there's like a leader that's like revolting against this thing, and they're having some negotiations over like whether troops should go in and take care of this problem or who, like, what to do about this. And that's kind of in the background too, sort of bubbling, which again is fucking timely. Like none of that shit changes. Of course, business and politics are like working together to deal with like regimes in other places. If you haven't listened to it, a really interesting podcast on Spotify is called Wind of Change, about the CIA's influence in Russia and on the Scorpion song Wind of Change and its promotion. It's really interesting on how these kind of things like wed together. And it's very Gaddis-like in its telling of like, almost like there's just so much chaos and so much interaction that this weird shit just sort of develops. And it's not even like you don't even like have to intentionally be like, I am going to trick people this way, or I'm going to do this thing. It just happens because that's part of your MO.
Sure. Sounds good to me.
It's great.
Yeah, I think.
So then they finally get lunch.
Yeah, then it's lunch, where my favorite scene takes place, which is when he tries to light her cracker.
His does, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what? He's like, oh, I thought it was a cigarette. I don't know. Like, this is awkward.
Oh shit. Oh shit. Let's back up for 1 second. I forgot there are two things. The one part with the preferred stock thing is on page 107. If we pass up this fourth dividend, we'll have Zona and they're chewing up Amy voting this preferred with these other fool trustees, blinding the blind, be the blindest damn trust since Samson got Delilah by the, what's that, Amy? And that's the part where like, that's like one of those keys of like, we do not want this to happen because people like her will be voting. Now that's bad. But then there's this, which is I have to reference because I'm so glad you're on here, Elizabeth. So 109.
Okay.
They're talking about various things. He says, just make damn clear, one business I'm not going broken is the book business. I always thought Vito was so ashamed of all the damn money his family would make in cement, and this trade publishing looked like the fastest way to get rid of it. Get hold of their profit and loss, or P&L, beaten. See if they got a 5-year consolidated statement. Worst run business in the country. Can't run it right because there's no damn way to budget for it.
There's a lot of shitting on books in here, like in the school budget planning too. Don't they do that?
We only need like $20. We need like $7,000 for vandalism.
Yeah. And then like the library, they're like, oh, just buy like a pin board or something. Like, don't use it on books. That's cool. It's like, okay. Yeah, I highlighted that part too. I forgot that was in here.
I love that.
I love it.
Yeah, where's he like the sticker? Is that like the thing? I'm trying to find that.
That was my favorite moment. It's at the end of the lunch scene. Like there's stuff that happens before. The kids are being rowdy, and then JR is like starting his shenanigans, kind of like asking for the nickels, and I think he's on the payphone at one point.
Yep.
Yes. And then it's the cracker.
And the cracker. Because Gibbs is wasted. There's so many parts of what money is. So last week we started with the idea of money, and they're like, money? Like, we hadn't even seen it. Like, it looked fake. It's like paper. Like, what the fuck is money? And then here we get like a series of adages of what money is. And like one of it, there's one line where it says something like, money that's not invested is not working. It's like a lazy partner. That was in last week and is reiterated here. And then there's another line here. Don't know the first simple damn rule there is for, sorry, this is hard to read this book, 115. Don't know the first simple damn rule there is. Buy for credit, sell for cash. Now he wants the bank to step in and bail him out. So there's that part. And then there's like, next time you see, well, most damn fools think, next time you see her, just tell her money is credit. So they have like, what is money? Money is credit. Money should be at work. Money needs to be moving, not be lazy. You buy at credit, sell for cash. Like there's all these little like capitalist 80s things in here. Even though it was written before the Reagan era, it's very much a prelude to that.
That was one of the most, like you can see in Kindle what people highlight. And that passage was like one of the most highlighted passages by people, which I was like, what? Like, are you reading this for like tips? Like, I don't know. I thought it was highlighting like literary passages. And I mean, I guess maybe it's just a theme, but some of the stuff that people highlight is weird to me. Like,
yeah, I'll bet.
This is also coming off the heels of coming off the gold standard fully under Nixon, right?
Yeah.
Money actually did lose. There's nothing to back it at this point.
Yeah, well, that's what they talk about the very first section is they're like, that quarter is counterfeit because it's bronze. Yeah. But this was the point where it was then bronze with silver coating instead of all silver. Yeah. So they're like, all the idea of what is money I mean, it is a symbol. Like the whole thing is symbolic at this point in time and becoming more and more symbolic. And once you enter into the age of symbols and of like where trades are happening for companies based on pieces of paper that are being ripped up and thrown, as they keep saying, they're like, there's all this paper that's ripped up and thrown all over. And they're like, well, you know, it's easy. Cause like, say you make baskets and you can't find anyone buy your baskets. Well, if a stock in baskets, someone somewhere will want to buy it. So obviously like that's a better business. And they're like, but what if nobody wants your fucking basket still? Like there's this weird way in which money and value is disassociated from actual physical life at the same time. And this book is watching that acceleration, which happens so much through the 80s and like leads to like the demise of our society in so many ways. And like the setting up and then demolishing of the middle class. But like this book sort of prefigures that and has all the conditions for like what that is. And these guys with their power being like, oh, we'll just sign it into a trust. We just saved all this money on these taxes. Like we're going to screw everything this way because it's kind of legal to do it and to have Amy in charge, blah, 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 blah. They're also like a strong line of anti-Semitism throughout all of that too.
There's a lot of that in here.
Everyone was anti-Semitic in this book. Like not everyone, but like the ones who are like really direct about it. Like when they're like, well, what do they call you at school? Jewbird?
Really bad.
Yeah. This is so bad. So they do that. And then there's the last real scene is like JR and Bast are walking and JR has the tickets he has the tickets and wait, does he have the tickets or he gives Bast the tickets and then he basically buys them back for Bast at like low cost. So like he's like giving him like a bit to be able to sell the tickets to get this $1 and to be able to make $1 off of the sale of these or returning the tickets and getting the refund on them. And that's the money JR needs to get everything going is what I think. I don't quite remember this book. I remember ends and scenes and vague things, but last week we were talking about like, what is the connection between JR and Bast? And I think that JR likes Bast because JR gets the $1 he needs to set everything in motion.
Well, an interesting thing is even when they're on the train going back that he has like the money to cover the tickets. Like he has like $10 or something. And it's like,
yeah.
Where did you?
Wealthy.
Yeah. Cause he's been like building it up.
Oh no, but Bast is wealthy because his family's wealthy. And that's where like, they're trying to get his dad, like if his dad is the one that died, he'll inherit all this money from their piano business. So Bast has like cash accessible. So he buys
the is the one that has it on the train, I mean. And it's like shocking that a child can cover, like he has $10 on him or whatever.
Wait, where is that?
When they're going back from New York?
Yeah, I want to see what Bast tries to apply for a job where they're like, you need to make 3 minutes of nonsense music to play in the background. And he's like, I can't do it. They're like, this is too meaningful. He's like, I just made meaningless music. And they're like, nope, it's too noticeable. Like, this is like the intro of Muzak times, right? And then he's like, well, I found these people that like want me to play for them that are like seemingly like burlesque dancers or something. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. I want to find the line on who has that money.
Well, and they want him to make music like someone, Bizet, but not, right? They say
it's very Schizopolis.
Not this person. Yeah, no, because I thought the whole thing was they get on the train and then he didn't have the tickets, right? But then JR's like, I have enough. Like, how much do you need? And then Amy gets left in New York, which is also a thing, unless I'm misreading. He's like, wait, where's Amy? Like, she didn't come back with you?
No, she leaves them.
But then he comes back, right? Like, Gibbs comes back without Amy. And Bast is like, where is Amy?
And Gibbs is like doing like dumb repertory theater. That's why he's out there in the first place. From that first scene. I wasn't sure if Gibbs pays it or a student or Bast.
No, Gibbs is with Amy until he realizes they got back, and then Gibbs shows up, and then Bast is like, wait,
Right.
where you didn't stay in New York? Like, how did, that's what I mean, like, where's Amy?
Yeah.
Where is the, maybe I misread though, but I think it's that JR has money that he's been accumulating. Hold on. It's like when they first get on the train, he's like, where's all the tickets? Okay.
Hey, that's all you got, $1? Wait a second. Okay, so here we go. But no, you mean this is on 132. The conductor's punch tapped the rim of the seat ahead. These kids all with you? Yes. Here, get your tickets out. You got that.
Okay.
Didn't she give them to you, Mrs. Joubert? Like she kept them so we wouldn't lose them. But no, you mean nobody has a ticket? But does any of you bring any money? 6, 7, the punch counted over their heads. 8. That's all you got? $1? Wait a second. The handkerchief wads surfaced again, bringing with it a tangle of bills, paper scraps, a pencil stub. 5, 6, 7. How much do you need? Hey, the bills came up damp and separate. That's 9, is that? No, you take the change, and that makes it easier to figure when you pay me back, okay? Well, thank you. Yes, but is this all that yours? What, this money? Sure, why? You want one more of it to make 10 even? A single came off free in a wad of its own. I mean, that makes it easier to figure out the interest and all, you know? Yes, but I just mean the interest like. I mean, that's what we're having now, these percents. Could you move your knee a second? I mean, this here portfolio, the zipper never hardly worked right. Even when I first got it, you know? He tugged at the battered thing. Holy shit, look at that. It's already ripping. I mean, that's why I need this here professional carrying case, you know? He got it open on his lap, extended now with both feet, dug into the hinge of the seat ahead. See? I mean, like, here it costs $34 million to equip this armored division. And it costs like $10 million to equip this here infantry division. See? So what you have to find out is, well, yes, look, I don't know anything about armored division. No, that's okay. This is about equipping them like you're equipping anything to figure out these different percents.
Right. So I thought that was JR, and he had like, all this money, and that was like, oh, he started.
Doesn't he have the money that they're supposed to pay for the stock with?
Oh, okay. I see.
Just hustling.
Yeah, in his case, his portfolio.
So funny.
JR's gonna win, man. Don't worry. JR is all right.
I think it's just a little Gordon Gecko. We just don't know it. I think the timing might work out right. I forget what year Wall Street was, like 84, 85, something like that. But maybe this is Gordon Gecko. Learn money never sleeps.
I mean, it kind of is, but funnier.
Yeah.
Like, because JR like doesn't have nefarious means. He just like looks at the systems and is like, the system is broke as fuck. And like you could take advantage of this.
Well, you realize nobody's reading, nobody cares, nobody does, and he's like gathering the information. So there's 2 things that nobody's aware of in this book. One is reading things related to like legalistic and law and business, and the other is culture. Like they never know. Like a lot of things, like the story that you're talking about, I think it was with Mahler, wasn't it? Whoever it was that they're telling the story, and Bass is like, no, that's absolutely not true. But like they're like, no, I've heard this. Like they're always like repeating things that they think are right. The Mozart thing is all wrong, but they're repeating it. They're like, the characters don't understand culture, but reference it as like tokens, and they never read anything. Like, and Amy's gets yelled at when she's reading the forms that she's going to sign for the trust, and they're like, just sign it, quit it, just sign it. And she's like, I want to read it first. But like it is, because all these things like reading things and seeing like where the loopholes and the like advantages are would be detrimental to the system. And like this book is a systems book in the sense that it wants to look at what those systems are and how they get created and what the fringe aspects of them are. Like it's really easy in our world now, especially, that people are so paranoid and believing in like very concrete systems, like people who are into conspiracy theories, but even those who aren't, like we tend to think things are a little bit more orchestrated than they are. And I feel like this book is like, yeah, we want this system. The system of capitalism is going to work, but it's going to work because of people like Dave Davidoff, who like is a fuck up, but is like sort of greasing those wheels.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think there's a lot of that too, even when they're trying to have the like budget committee or whatever evaluate the TV programming that they show the children,
And
right? Like,
yeah.
yeah. And they want her to switch to like Mozart, and she's like, "Well, I can't just like really switch. Like that's really hard." They've learned. They're like, "It doesn't matter. Like just do like whatever. Just like hashtag content. Like it's fine."
Yeah. Like the idea that like there is going to be a system, but the system is made out of people that are half-assedly understanding.
It doesn't matter like what
it's just a mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always fast, cheap, and out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Like I
Something
think
I wonder too is just overhearing all of this. Like I wonder if you walked into like how particular is this dialogue in its obscurity, and like to what degree could you just walk into any industry and just overhear and it would sound like to an outsider, you know, like this. Like I think that's an interesting question.
These people sound just like the people I went to business school with.
Really?
100%. 100%. As I'm saying, fuck it to everything. Fuck it to business school too.
I think one of my favorite lines and kind of like scene, I think kind of wraps it all, like for me, wraps it all up really nicely with the satire, the people not paying attention, dealing with finance and capitalism. Like even so, like we were kind of primed with that scene with the lawyer Cohen at the beginning with how just bizarre everything's going to be. It was on the bottom of page 100 up to 101. Who the devil cares whether you played football against Brown, Monty? You helped her in creating Mr. Moncrief's image as an aggressive, competitive team player. Image. Kate's laugh cleared his throat. They ought to see you running around with that damn butterfly net, Monty.
Nabokov.
Yeah. But yeah, like to me that just kind of encapsulates like everything we've been talking circles around, where it's funny, it's weird, it's bizarre, nobody's paying attention, and these are the people that are in charge of everything, and a sixth grader is going to
Amy takes them to New York and leaves. And he got it. And he's not even working for the school. He's never worked for the school. He was like a composer in residence, and like it doesn't even have that job. And she's like, "You've got this. Take him back home. It's good."
Yeah.
Like nobody in charge really knows what they're doing. The blind leading the blind thing about like letting preferred stockholders vote is also like all of these people. They have their own like little bit that they want to take advantage of and like get theirs, but like they're also like no way can they organize themselves into a coherent system.
Nope.
So what's your favorite line from this section, Elizabeth?
It's about the cracker. I'm just trying to find it.
You look for the cracker. Brian, you got a different one that you want to use? You want to use that one?
I'll use that one. And then from last week, even though I wasn't able to attend, my favorite one from last week, while you guys are looking up, in light of Rudy Giuliani hair dye spilling down his face, Mr. Cohen seems to perspire quite freely, one of the persons said. And then just slightly below that, I thank you for your patience. Yes, all I need is a copy of his birth certificate. So there's the whole imagine lawyers sweating and then birther conspiracies. Just like, damn, I'm reading into this too much, but that feels like yesterday. Yeah.
If you haven't found Elizabeth, I have one on 87. That's one of these interstitial passages that you guys really like that I think is really great here too. It's not really one of the shifting ones, but it is like an exposition. But her gaze, shifting, evading the stabs of his free hand, rose to rest on the magnificent chandelier glittering serene through the lazy drift of a full American flag, reflected from the fortress behind them rising, falling back on gentle billows, shifting planes of reflection and reality where the still points of light pierce the engulfing warmth of the sun. Which I thought was like really pretty description of her seeing the sun behind an American flag at the stock market. And I thought that was really, that's a very good image for this sort of book.
Chad, I kid you not. I literally highlighted that exact passage the moment when it switched to the chandelier. And I said, Chad's going to ask us to pick out passages. And this is one Chad's really going to like.
Whoa, no shit. That's so crazy.
I can like show you in my Kindle. That was the part that reminded me to like start looking at passages because I knew you're going to ask that. That's so funny. It's bizarre. They're looking out like over the floor, right? And then it says, but Amy's eyes were like on the chandelier. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Like it's a subtle thing of like the sun behind the flag that I really just like that whole bit in the way that he writes it.
Okay, I have mine. This is after the moment actually happens. It's reflecting upon it. But he held her fallen wrist there. Listen, you can't. Always somebody standing in your cradle, somebody setting fire to your cracker.
I have one more comment. Sorry, I know this is a long episode and we're going way over, but I really want to mention this because this is also part of Gaddis's obsession, and I think is a key to reading the rest of the book. Is on page 141. The last line is they're talking about the music, and this is what you're referring to about like how do you write your music? Like, don't you have those notes? And he's like, here's a key to 96th Street, blah blah blah. He says he writes it, and he's a prominent conductor. Look, music's not a business like shoes. And there's a whole thing obsessed with like Benjamin's Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, which is an underlying theme of this book and of all of Gaddis's book, where like the player piano stuff will come up later, where it's not art, it's reproduction. It's a way that you can mechanically reproduce things. Is the value. Like the value isn't in creating the art, the value is in creating the way to reproduce it over and over and over and over and over again and be able to monetize that. And that's like the crass, horrible, shitty aspect of like capitalism that this book is like tapping into and talking about. That art is devalued in favor of reproduction. Mm-hmm. He as a composer does not matter, but can he compose something that nobody will remember and that you can play in an elevator over and over again, like when they first experienced music? That's what we need. We need to be able to reproduce shit like that, not have something that's unique and memorable. That's
like the horror of this book.
Well, I mean, it's the world we live in, like 100%.
No, it's real.
Satire, like you say, Brian, because it is making fun of, it is satire, I think. I mean, this all happened.
Yeah, no, this is an extremely chaotic, noisy world, and nobody's listening.
Yeah, nobody listens.
And nobody listens, and just it's so noisy and it's so crazy and chaotic, and everybody just is plowing straight ahead with whatever they're focused on.
This is for a future episode, but I have a hard time reading a lot of pages of Gaddis in a row. Like I like reading the scenes because like I need a breath because it is so much. Like I'm taking so much in, and so many of these people are just like, they feel like they're wired up and like not quite ever there. Like nobody's ever connecting right. Anyways, Elizabeth, any Tin House books you want to plug?
Yes, I have one here.
Wow.
A poetry collection I acquired. We're sending it to print like this minute, actually. It's wonderful. Wait, The Perseverance by Raymond Antrobus. It's coming out this spring. He's super talented. It's his debut. Very excited. What else? We're doing my autobiography of Carson McCullers in paperback soon, which was just the National Book Award finalist. So that's exciting. And Alyssa Washuta's essay collection coming out this spring, White Magic. That's going to be really good too.
Nice. Sounds very strong.
Yes. Very exciting.
Brian, anything you want to talk up? Aside from your book?
No, Percocet and gin martinis. If you want to go to the moon on the tail of a dragon, get yourself some surgery and legally acquire both of those things. Try it out this weekend, but you may have breathing problems.
Try out a lot of it.
Yeah. A lot of breathing problems. Just throwing that out there. But you won't have orthopedic pain. I'll tell you. No, I have absolutely nothing to endorse except for this poetry collection she just mentioned. It's going to be incredible.
I've already given my endorsement. I suggest listening to Wind of Change on Spotify podcast. The first episode kind of sucks. After that, it's pretty interesting. It's one of those dumb podcasts that doesn't come to a conclusion, but gives you all the pieces you need to see like how fucked up the influence and culture can be.
Oh, I have something I'll recommend. Corey Henry, he is a jazz organ player. He has a Christmas album that just came out. And so if you have to listen to Christmas music, listen to Corey Henry's new jazz album that came out like 2 days ago. It's on YouTube.
Mariah Carey.
Or Mariah Carey. That's mine. Corey Henry Christmas. Yay.
Corey Henry Christmas and Mimi. Okay. Anyone have any last words?
No, thank you for having me, Chad.
Thank you so much. It's always fun when you're on here.
Yeah, I enjoy.